So in Season 9, both tanks and DPS are going to be getting a smaller version of the support passive. Self-healing passives for all roles is crazy and fundamentally changes the balance of the game, and we got to talk about it. But if you enjoy the content, smash that like and subscribe, and let's jump in. Now, the Overwatch game director Aaron Keller dropped a 2024 kickoff blog that says in Season 9, we're getting a support passive for tanks and DPS. It's not going to be just for supports. Now, it is important that it's not going to be as powerful as the one in the support role, but it's still going to be there. And that's absolutely crazy. I think that the support passive is by far the strongest passive, and it's dramatically shifted how the support role is played. No longer has supports had to decide between some of the harder decisions that they used to have to, like an Ana trying to nade herself versus nading someone else. When you have a support passive, there's not really that big of an incentive to nade yourself almost ever unless you're out of position. So that even further strengthens good players to be more and more aggressive, and they do it without consequence. And I think that that's one of the things that has changed the support role fundamentally. And now that we're doing it to the DPS and tank role, how is that going to affect them? And how is this going to change balance? So the first thing is, let's talk about tank. And having a self-heal when you're not in the fight, like self-heal when you're not taking damage on tanks, that is not going to be that relevant for most tanks. I think that it's going to be relevant on some of the dive tanks, especially characters like Doomfist. You could definitely set up in one location, kind of chill out there, waiting for your team and getting some heal back. And then you don't need your teammates to like come in, heal you up before you go in. You're like already good to go. So I could see that being relevant, but because of the larger health pools, I don't really see it as that big of a deal, especially because tanks are typically engaged in a fight with their support, so they're going to be able to get heals all the same. So it's not going to affect them nearly as much. Now, it does help to affect like the annoyance factor when you are just like out of the fight, waiting for your team. Eventually, you will get healed to full HP, and your teammates don't have to come regroup with you just to get you back to full. So it's one less thing that people have to do. So I think for tanking, it's kind of just more of a quality of life thing, less of a super powerful buff that you're gonna feel, even though on some characters it will be felt. Now, talking about DPS, things change dramatically. Because being able to leave the fight and get healed and then come back into the fight at a later date means that if you are in a fight and your team dies, you can literally just set up somewhere behind the opponents. Like, you can just wait there. You don't have to reveal yourself. You don't have to come out of hiding. You don't have to go back to your team. You don't have to die. You can just wait there and set up, and then when you pop out, you'll have your full health total and you'll have all your abilities. So as long as your team is fighting and applying pressure, you can contribute to that team fight as a full fighting force, and that's a really, really big deal. In addition to that, there is this pull to end a fight or a duel with a DPS that didn't exist before. You feel it a lot on DPS when you're up against a support where if they cut line of sight from you, you feel like if you're not going to completely disengage, you need to literally chase them because they're going to get all their health back if you don't keep constantly doing damage to them. And other DPS are going to feel a lot of the same way. It's like a duel happens fast, or you should typically disengage after your cooldowns go through, because if you don't continue the fight, if you're not constantly doing damage to them, then they're just going to get healed back up over time. Now, I know that some people are going to have mixed opinions on whether or not this is going to be a good or bad change, and I err on the side of this being a good change for several reasons and with several caveats. So I think it's good for everyone to have a support healing passive, because then they're less reliant on another role. I think one of the biggest things about damage dealing that can be really frustrating is when you constantly need like people to like top you up and babysit you, right? Maybe you're out of the fight and you need to get topped up before you can do anything. Maybe you just keep taking damage that is like damage over time. You're getting caught on fire or things like that from Astro's Dynamite, and you need people to keep topping you up. Whatever the reason is, it's like you're constantly asking for like, hey, help me, I need help again, I need help again. You always need help from a support. I'm taking away some of that urgency from needing a support. If I'm just like playing a good position, I take some damage, I just don't peak for a while, and then I can re-peak at full health. That is super powerful that I don't need someone else to enable that. And I think as a result of this, what you can do is dramatically reduce the amount of healing that supports can output consistently. So they can output heals, but maybe it's in big bursts, right? So like if a tank is going in and they need to burst them to full, or if you're actively fighting, they can burst you up. But as far as like this constant triggered healing that is just like constantly radiating, constantly healing people. I don't think that we need as much of that. I don't think we need as much of that anymore, where as long as you're in a good position as a DPS or even a tank, you can reset and get some of that health back. So I kind of explained why I think that this could be overall a good thing, assuming that the numbers are within reason. They did say that this was a way nerfed version of the support one. So as long as the numbers are in reason, I think that it could be a good thing. Takes the burden off support players, actually buffs the DPS role, which right now has the weakest passive. Like, it's just so freaking bad. And this is like an added benefit to them that will definitely help them more than the tank role. But like I said, the weakest passive in the game. And I understand there's going to be complaints about this, like on all sides. Some people are saying, hey, this makes it easier to support. You're just babying the support role. And my response to that is, it literally makes it easier to play DPS. Like, it makes it easier on you as a DPS player. It makes you fundamentally less reliant on supports. They don't have to pocket you nearly as much to pull off plays or take space or take any angle or apply any pressure. I mean, there are some DPS that literally feel like if they are not properly getting enabled, they just can't get value in the way that they need to. And this helps DPS substantially. And yes, well, this is definitely gonna make it less taxing on the support role to like constantly heal up. They don't need to do that nearly as much, especially in pre-fight situations, and when their DPS is in like really far off angles. They don't necessarily need to like run all the way around to go heal you, or the DPS doesn't need to meet up with you. So it deals with a lot of those awkward situations. And yes, it's also gonna make it easier on the support role, but it also means that we can change the balance around this, perhaps weaken some of the numbers of healing. We've already seen a huge departure between supports being called healers or being seen as healers, and this just furthers that, where supports get their value with other things. They make plays, they use their abilities, they support, they don't just heal. Although burst healing is still going to be an active part of team fights, it's not needed for individuals, especially DPS, to function at a basic level. I think what people are really worried about with this is power creep. And this has been an ongoing problem where like the damage numbers, the support cooldowns, and the healing numbers have just been completely too much, like completely too powerful, completely too high, and they really need to do massive nerfs to damage and healing, which they have said that they are going to do. And when I say massive, like, it needs to be really substantial. Like, the damage that is being outputted and the healing that is being outputted needs to be less. Things need to be killable. But I'm also a fan that if you are in a good position, if you're in a really solid position, you peek out, you take damage, and you retreat to that solid position. I mean, if you were in a decent lobby with decent players, you would get healed up anyways instantly. So the fact that you don't need someone to do that for you means that you are rewarded for taking these good positions, heavily rewarded. And there are still plays that can be made and things that can be made around it. But if you combined this with the huge damage nerfs and huge healing nerfs that they talked about, I really do think that the game will feel less frustrating for a lot of players. I can tell you from my really small sample size, playing DPS in like a freaking triad free-for-all where every time you get a kill, you get like some health back. I like that. Like, personally, I really just like the feeling of it. And even though this isn't exactly what I had in mind when I wanted there to be more passives and a further divide between the roles, like I've thought that damage should have multiple different passives inside the role for different types of characters and things like that. So this is not my ideal dream by any stretch of the imagination, but I do not think that this is going to be as bad as everyone thinks it is. In fact, I think it's actually going to be a good step. In the current iteration of the game, I think it's going to be a step in the right direction. But maybe you don't agree with me. You tell me, how do you feel about the support passives being applied to everyone, even though it's in a weaker state? How do you feel about it? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments down below.